that was the last panel of today's session, but still we have the last part where we will have a keynote speech where we will be discussing about the challenges that the automotive sector faces, what we have mentioned, this dual disruption of electrification and connectivity. And for that, we will bring on board Cléa Martinet. She's the Vice President Sustainability at Renault Group, that she will be joining by Josep Maria Recasens. And they will be discussing of what it means to be, join me. Jeez.
We have already been talking a little bit about decarbonization and challenges of the automotive industry before, right? I would like to, whoops, work? Yes. So I would like to give you a little bit with Cléa, a little bit more of that challenges and how sustainability has played a fundamental role in our strategy, right? So we can skip that.
Yeah.
So as I was telling you before, right, many people are asking me how it's going to be the automotive sector in the next decades to come, right? What I invite you is to do a flashback with me, right? And come back to 2010. And those are some of the elements that have described the automotive industry at that time. Just focus on the three below, right? Tesla, right? At that time, Tesla was doing the IPO with 1,500 roadsters in the US, 2010, right? China, Chinese OEMs were failing miserably in entering in Europe because of lack of quality and reliability, 2010, right? And in 2010, nobody was talking about CO2 emissions. Nobody in 2010, right? So this is 2020, early 2020s, right? So Tesla, right? Everybody knows Tesla. Everybody knows the capital market value of Tesla, right? Everybody knows that Chinese is landing in Europe, and not only in Europe, but across the planet, right? And we talk about CO2. No, we talk about banning ICE vehicles in 2035. In 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, right? And that in the context of a scalable and mature technology. Then the question is, if the world, if the automotive sector has changed so much in 10 years of a stable technology, a stable economy, and stable geopolitics, what is going to happen in the next 10 or 15 years to come, right? Because the reality is that we, Renault Group and our peers, we have never faced so many challenges simultaneously as today we are facing. Decarbonization, digitalization, ultra-regulation, a tsunami of regulation, right? More than ever, price volatility, technological volatility, next generation skills, upskilling and reskilling our workforce, and last but not the least, geopolitical tensions. But if there is one element that is crossing transversally all those challenges, is decarbonization. And why do we talk about decarbonization? Because we are shifting from combustion engine business to EV business, right? And why we're doing that? Because we want to decarbonize, right? It's just an example how we, Renault Group, are we decarbonizing our vehicles. From a 50-ton equivalent CO2 of a combustion engine diesel, right, up to 50% reduction just because we shift from combustion to EV. But at Renault, we don't want to stop there, as I was telling you before. We want to continue with more levers in the upstream, in the supply chain, with low carbon footprint materials or low carbon footprint batteries or green energy, especially renewable energy. And all those levers will help us to decarbonize more and more our vehicles. Let me explain you the complexity that we are facing from shifting to the ICE value chain to the EV value chain. It looks pretty much the same. 4 phases: materials, production, use, and recycle. But the components, the technology, the elements, the variables in the ICE value chain have nothing to do with the ones in the EV value chain. And more than that, the players are completely different. So you see European American flags, Japanese flags on the upper side, and you see Chinese flags. And not only the region or the countries are important, the players, the suppliers, the OEMs, the source of energies, the miners, the drillers. So everything is different. So the question that Cléa is going to answer is, with all that panorama, with all that paraphernalia, right? How a group like us, Renault Group, is taking action to face all those challenges and to succeed, because we have succeeded so far. We came in 2020 from the worst result ever in the company to posting the best result ever in our 120 years history. So please, Cléa.
Yes.
You can.
It's fine. Yeah, because going electric also comes at a cost. If you take the production cost of an ICE vehicle compared to an electric one, you take 60% plus. So it makes the challenge even more dire for us. So what we did, Luca De Meo in 2021, that's our CEO, he announced a strategic plan called the Renaulution. And in the past 4 years, this plan has been to address in the most sustainable and competitive way the energy transition challenge. What we did is take a bold bet and say that France and Europe would be where we would produce our electric vehicle competitively. To do so, what we did is localizing in northern France 2 electric vehicle assembly plants, 1 battery casing factory, and 2 battery gigafactories, all in northern France, plus our e-powertrain factory in Normandy, a couple hundred miles from there. And that created a logistic and competitive ecosystem that contributed to reaching minus 40% of cost from 2023 to 2027, 2028. So that's the industry background. From a workforce point of view, we didn't start from a clean state, so to speak. We're a legacy industry. We had a workforce entirely skilled to produce ICE engine and vehicles. So what we did was organize a complete transformation of skills, upskilling and reskilling through the Renault University, concentrated on 3 poles: circular economy, electrification, and data cybersecurity. In the past 4 years, we've upskilled and reskilled nearly 40,000 employees in France and in Europe, so that the transition would be inclusive from a workforce point of view also. And what we did also was to reduce our exposure to raw materials volatility and to the very center of minerals refining, which is China. To do so, we invested in a circular industry loop with the future is neutral, and considered end-of-life vehicles, which are waste, as a resource, and create short closed loop on steel, aluminum, copper, and in the midterm, minerals, contributing to, I won't say restoring a sovereignty, but at least some form of independency on a European-made energy transition. And finally, that's the behind the scenes, you know. I told you about industry, about workforce, about circular loops. This is what you have on the roads. We're making our way from C-segment family vehicles ranking from 30,000 to 40,000 euro to a more affordable range on the B segment with the Renault 5, Renault 4, and the Twingo ranking from 20,000 euros to 30,000 euros, making the energy transition inclusive also from a customer point of view. So we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go.
So, and this is the way we have to run, right? So this is the adoption curve expected to happen as long as we want to comply with regulation. Right? It's again a strategy driven by regulation, right? What does it mean? In 2030, if we, European OEMs, don't want to pay penalties, we, on average, we have to reach 55% of EV mix in our fleets, right? Today, in 2024, we have reached 13.6%. This is still a long way to catch up to that figure. Why? Because there is a clear tendency of early adopters, people that are just willing to get the new technology because they are trendsetters, because they want to be hype, or even because they have the purchase power to buy that technology. But the remaining more or less 85% is asking 2 things. Give me affordable cars, OEM, right? And give me more range or sufficient charging infrastructure. If those elements do not occur, that 55% is just a dream, right? And it's our responsibility to put the conditions, vehicles, that make that goal happen. But we are necessary, but we are not the only ones to make it happen. There is a co-responsibility among different actors, the energy system, the financial system, the public administrations, and even the customers, in order to comply with those objectives. And the question is, how can we comply with that transition, with that transformation, taking into consideration what Cléa has explained you? Decarbonization, transformation will imply more cost, or is implying more cost for us. And at the same time, the majority of the OEMs in Europe have announced profit warnings last year, or very important ventures like the one of Northvolt has failed in the attempt of becoming a battery maker. How can we cope with that? So it's very simple or very complicated. We need to balance those three elements. So sustainability, yes, for sure. Profit resilience, yes, for sure. And competitiveness. We have to play with those three elements at the same level of importance. Putting one in front of another will jeopardize the others. So this is the equation that we collectively, we have to guarantee in order to succeed with each and every single goal that we have in front of us. Because if we do not make it so, what is at stake is what is written at that slide, right? Is the entire European automotive sector which is at stake, right? 7% of the GDP, more than 13 million jobs in Europe, net export contributor from Europe, and the big contributor in terms of R&D investment in Europe. This is what is at stake if we do not comply with that trilemma. I repeat, sustainability, economical resilience, and competitiveness. And the story, ladies and gentlemen, is going to repeat it. In the past, in the US, with fossil fuel, where the cost was far below to the Europe levels, the Americans have built big cars, heavy cars. What we have done, the Europeans, efficiency. We have created the small and compact segments in Europe. Clios, Polos, 208s, Megans, Golfs. That was our specialty. Our focus was efficiency, low consumption, weight and size. Now, with the EV, where the dominance is in China, where the exposure is in China, because of materials, because of battery, because of... the response is going to be the same. Efficiency. And which is the response? Small, compact vehicles with reasonable battery size at an affordable price. This has to be the response to that challenge. And what are we promoting? What are we calling for an action? Let's mobilize all the necessary resources, including with the regulator, what it's making Europe competitive and credible in terms of mobility. Small and compact vehicles, for the sake of competitiveness, for the sake of profitability, and for the sake of sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you.